On today's Friday Farm Report, I will give you my top 10 bold predictions for the Mets' top prospects this season.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. You can also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, yesterday was opening day for the New York Mets. Today it is opening day for the Syracuse Mets, which is why we're going to focus in on the Mets farm system for our Friday farm report. I will tell you, if you missed it after the game yesterday, I did a live stream breaking down an opening day loss for the Mets. So you can still check that out on YouTube or on your podcast feeds. And if you are a little bit confused with the multiple podcasts that went up last night, again, I want to remind you that we do have a postcast for the whole season this year, and that is always going to be marked postcast. Those are the shows that I am not hosting. If there is no marking of postcast, then you know it's a show hosted by me. We had two live streams that went up yesterday, myself and Chris, as we both broke down what happened on opening day. So if you want to double dip there, you can do that. But let's talk about this farm system here. I'm going to go through my list of the top 10 prospects in the Met system. I don't have predictions for all 10 of these guys, but I have predictions for a lot of them. And so we're going to start right up to the top of this list, Brandon Sproat. Brandon Sproat is my number one prospect in this system. I think that's pretty much become consensus that Sproat is the top prospect in this farm system. He will start this year in AAA. Who knows how many more starts he will need in AAA before he gets a call to the show. Part of that is going to be opportunity-based. When will the Mets need him in the starting rotation? And then is he going to fare better than he did last year in Syracuse, where he did struggle a bit? My bold prediction for Brandon Sproat, it's not that he's going to make starts for the Mets this year. That's not bold. I think that's highly likely. A bold prediction is that Brandon Sproat will start a playoff game for the New York Mets this year. Now, this is bold on multiple fronts. For one, the fact that he will ingratiate himself enough at the big league level to earn that type of an honor, but also that he can last the marathon and be stretched out, good to go, still a starting pitcher by the end of the season where he gets that type of an opportunity. David Stearns recently spoke about the idea of, I think it was on one of those, in-game interviews during spring training. He mentioned how with the top prospects, what you don't want to do for a starting pitcher is transition them to be a reliever and then stretch him back out to be a starter. So he said at some point, you might take a top pitching prospect and decide that for the team this year, the best course of action is to shorten them up and have them pitch out of the bullpen. So I could also see a scenario where Brandon Sproat thrives in AAA. Maybe he makes some starts when the Mets need him to. They send him back down, and at some point they decide, all right, our rotation's in good shape. We're going to shorten him up and have him pitch as a high leverage arm for us down the stretch. But that, again, to me, is somewhat of a more likely outcome. I think a bolder prediction, that's why I made it, is that Brandon Sproat is going to shove in Syracuse, pitch really well. He's going to force his way onto the big league roster, and ultimately he is going to hold on to a starting spot and be able to pitch into October, where he will make a playoff start. On a similar note, my number two prospect in the Mets farm system is Jett Williams, and for me, a bold prediction for Jett is that he will be the Mets starting center fielder in the second half. Now, last year was a lost season for Jett Williams. He had the wrist injury that required surgery, kept him out until the very end of the season. He got a cup of coffee in Syracuse only to extend his season because he didn't play much in Double-A, and so they were just trying to give him games. that had him go play in the Arizona Fall League to continue to get on the field. Now it's going to be finally a full season at AA for Jett Williams, and I think he's going to thrive. I think he's going to earn that promotion to AAA. And if the Mets are getting subpar play from their center fielders, if Jose Siri and Tyrone Taylor are only giving it to you defensively, but they're not giving you that offensive upside, at some point, the prospect of bringing up a Jett Williams would be too tantalizing to pass up, and the Mets will decide to give him some run in center field, and he will grab onto that spot and hold it and be the Mets starting center fielder from the middle of July on through the end of the season. That is another bold prediction. Now we're going down the line again. At number 3 prospect in this system, according to my list, is Ryan Clifford. I got a bold prediction for him as well. I think I made the same bold prediction last year, but I'm going to stick to it because he didn't get it done last year. I think he will this year. Ryan Clifford will be the first Mets prospect since Pete Alonso to hit 30 home runs in a season. You'd be surprised that Mark Vientos, Francisco Alvarez, Ronnie Mauricio, Brett Beatty, all those guys, none of them hit 30 home runs in a season. Vientos hit 25 home runs in 83 games in 2021. So he certainly was on that type of a pace, but he didn't get to 30. Francisco Alvarez hit 27 home runs in 2022. You have to go back to 2018, Pete Alonso's last season as a prospect, where he hit 36 home runs prior to getting that call up in 2019 when he hit 53 and set the rookie home run record. So for Ryan Clifford, my bold prediction is he will clear 30 home runs this year. He hit 24 home runs in 2023 in 115 games. Last year, that home run total dipped to 19, but he only hit 1 home run in 31 games played at High A Brooklyn. It's a very tough ballpark to hit home runs, particularly as a left-handed hitter. So that's why the Mets promoted him to AA, and in 99 games in AA, his numbers were a lot better. He's going to start the season right back in AA. I think he'll thrive, hit a bunch of home runs, get a promotion to Syracuse, continue that momentum. And if he does play with Syracuse for, the second half of the season or the final 2/3 of the season, and he stays healthy, he's going to get a lot of games played, a lot of opportunity to rack up those home run numbers, and I think he will get to 30. Now, my number 4 prospect in the Mets system is Carson Bench. Carson Bench, I believe he'll start the season in Port St. Lucie on low A. I think he could have a very quick trip through the lower levels of the minor leagues. I would not be surprised at all if Carson Bench ended up in AA this year, but I don't have any bold predictions for him. My next bold prediction is for my number 5 prospect in the Mets system, Jesus Baez, but I'm going to give you that prediction in just a minute. First, though, a quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing better than catching an MLB game live, and now that the season has started, you have the ability to do that, to hear the crack of the bat, to hear the roar of the crowd, to smell ballpark food. If you're looking to go to a game last minute, Game Time makes getting tickets easier than ever because with last minute deals, all-in pricing, and the lowest price guaranteed, Game Time takes the stress out of buying MLB tickets. Plus, the ticket prices drop as the game gets closer, meaning you can score an incredible deal. Typically, I don't buy my seats until I'm basically walking into the ballpark. Then I'm able to find the best possible deal and get my tickets to go to the game. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. If you're watching on YouTube today, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button. Help us get closer to our next goal of 13,000 subscribers. If you're enjoying the content, hit the like button. If you have a bold prediction about one of the Mets' top prospects, leave it in the comments below. All right, so I told you I have a bold prediction on Jesus Baez. He was my number 5 prospect when I ranked these a couple weeks ago. Baez had a great season last year in Port St. Lucie, earned the promotion to high A, and was playing well in a very limited sample size before he tore his meniscus. So the question this year, for one, is just going to be health for Jesus Baez. And once that is situated, I'm sure we will see him playing regularly in high A Brooklyn. You never know. He might get that promotion to double A. My bold prediction is a little bit of a different one for Jesus Baez, and that's that he is going to improve his stock enough that Jesus Baez will be the headlining prospect in a blockbuster trade at the deadline. Now, I know it's weird to predict that someone's going to get traded, but to me, if Baez got traded, and it's not that I want to see him go right now, I would say in this farm system, if you're not including Ronnie Mauricio still as a prospect, Jesus Baez is the Mets' top third base prospect. But if Brett Baty establishes himself this year, and you already have Mark Vientos, and who knows what will happen with Ronnie Mauricio, you might be fine at that spot. And so he could be a prospect that you're a little bit more willing to move. And if the Mets were able to pull off whatever big trade they need at the deadline, I don't know what it's going to be. The assumption now would probably be an ace pitcher. Maybe it's a bat. We really don't know. But whatever the Mets need, if Jesus Baez was the headliner that went out, and that means that they were able to hold on to Brandon Sproat, to Jett Williams, to Carson Bench, to Ryan Clifford, to even a Jonah Tong or a Nolan McLean, that is a huge win for this farm system, for a guy that the Mets were able to sign internationally, to have skyrocketed up prospect lists so much over the past year and a half at that point, that he would be able to be the piece in a big trade. Again, these are bold predictions, and I'm not saying I want the Mets to move him, but I do think that if he was the biggest prospect move, and it was the move that took you from a playoff contender to a World Series contender, it was that big trade that you needed, that would be a huge win for this farm system. Number 6, I don't have any predictions for Luisangel Acuna, who is my, again, number 6 prospect in the system. It's tough to project where his season's going to be, because he could be in the role that he's in right now as a bench utility infielder. He could be right back in Syracuse for the whole year, and I'm not feeling very strongly about his play in either spot to make some bold prediction. Last year, I predicted Luisangel Acuna would steal more bases than his brother, and I won that in a very awkward way as Ronald Acuna Jr. went down with the torn ACL. But this year, I don't have any predictions for Acuna. Number 7 on my list of the top 10 prospects in the Mets farm system is Jonah Tong. He's going to start the year back in Double-A. I don't have any bold predictions for him. I just hope that he continues to add to his repertoire. I think he needs to get another pitch that he can really trust, along with that great fastball that he pairs well with the 12-6 curveball. So I'm hoping that's what happens this year, but no prediction there for him. I do have a prediction for my number 8 prospect in this system, and that is Nolan McLean. This is my 5th prediction, and that is that Nolan McLean will make his debut in the big leagues this year as a relief pitcher. I already mentioned David Stern's comments about shortening guys up. I think at some point this year, the Mets might be looking for a high leverage arm from their farm system, some guy that has a lot of upside. And while Nolan McLean is a pitcher the Mets still hope can be a real force in their rotation as early as 2026, he also has incredible stuff that would translate to the bullpen very well. He's the guy that just spins the heck out of the baseball. The RPMs on his pitches are, over 3,000 for some of those breaking balls for a sweeper, slider, all that good stuff. This is a guy that could convert to be a reliever. He could go with just a fastball and a couple different variations of his breaking ball and be absolutely electric. So my prediction for Nolan McLean is at some point the Mets will decide, we're going to shorten him up, and he is going to be an impact piece out of the bullpen down the stretch for the New York Mets. My number 9 prospect in the Mets farm system is Drew Gilbert. I'm very curious about Drew Gilbert's health with these hamstring issues that he's had. Last year, the hamstrings kept him out for pretty much the whole season. They were still an issue in spring training. We weren't seeing Drew Gilbert as much as we thought we would. And I'll show you the AAA roster in the final segment today, but Drew Gilbert's not on it. So I don't know what that means. I'd imagine he's still hurt. Does he start the year at a lower level? Is he going to start the year in Port St. Lucie until he gets back in game shape and then eventually make his way up to AAA? I'm guessing that's the case. But with that health question, there is no prediction I could possibly make about Drew Gilbert this season. My number 10 prospect in the Mets farm system is Elian Pena. He's the guy that got the $5 million bonus from the Mets in international free agency. But he's going to be playing the Dominican Summer League this year. Hard to predict much on he's still 17, 18-year-old shortstop playing in the Dominican Republic. I'm not going to make a prediction there. The number 11 prospect in the Mets farm system that I ranked was Nick Morabito. And I do have a prediction for Nick Morabito. Nick Morabito swiped 59 bases last year, but he was caught 15 times. So my prediction for Morabito is that he swipes 70 this year and is caught less than 10 times. So I'm just banking on him honing in on that carrying trait, because what this guy has, he's a good defender in center field, and so he has the floor of a solid fourth outfielder. And he sort of is a high probability big leaguer just because of the glove and being able to play all three outfield spots eventually. The hope is he can continue to hit for a high average so that he can leverage his speed on the base paths. I think in the lower levels, Morabito was able to hit for a higher average because the defenders weren't as good. So you put the ball in play and you can get more infield hits. As he goes on, it goes along, and he eventually gets up to AA this year, it's going to be a little more of a struggle to get on base. But if he can continue to get on base, and if he can be more efficient with his base stealing when he's there, I think we can see some huge stolen base totals. Last year, he got off 74 attempts. So if he can get to, maybe it's 77 attempts and he's even more efficient and he steals 70 on 77 attempts, which would be an exceptional rate, that would be a season that would really be impressive. And that would give the Mets something to think about as a guy that can be an elite base stealer for them, and a guy that could thrive in a bench role. You never know what could happen. This still could be your center fielder of the future. Number 12 prospect in the Mets farm system, Blade Tidwell. He'll be right back in AAA. I don't have any predictions on Tidwell this year. He impressed in spring training, so we'll see if he can carry that over in Syracuse and will continue to be a starting pitcher throughout this season. I do think there's some real reliever risk with Tidwell. Number 13 on my list was Jeremy Rodriguez, but I had him in Boston Baro at a coin flip. I didn't know which one I really liked more. I went with Jeremy Rodriguez because he's the guy that has a little bit of a bigger name, came over in the Tommy Pham trade. But Boston Baro was the standout in the spring breakout game. And so I am flipping those two, and I'll say that Boston Baro is the number 13 prospect in the Mets system. And I do have a bold prediction for him, but I'm going to give it to you in just a minute. First, though, another quick word from our sponsors. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. The baseball season's in full swing. There's no better way to get in on the action than with Prize Picks, which is the best place for daily fantasy sports. With Prize Picks, you pick more or less on at least 2 player projections, and if you're right, you can win up to 1,000 times your cash, whether it's strikeouts, RBIs, first inning runs. Prize Picks keeps every game exciting. For the Mets-Astros game today, I did put a pick in. I got Brett Baty more on 0.5 total bases. So if Brett Baty gets a hit, that part of my lineup is going to come through. And then I got Hunter Brown for the Astros with less than 6 strikeouts. I think the Mets are going to put the ball in play against him. He's not going to rack up those Ks. Setting a lineup takes less than 60 seconds. And when you win, your payout is quick, safe, and secure. And you can always take advantage of Taco Tuesday, where Prize Picks offers discounts on select player projections for even more value. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONMLB for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. If you're an everyday listener of the show, make sure to become a Locked On Mets insider. This is our texting service where you get updates from me anytime news breaks from the Mets. You can ask me questions anytime. You can also take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, find a link in the episode description go to subtext.com/lockedonmets. So, Boston Baro, my now number 13 prospect in the Mets farm system. What is my bold prediction for him this year? My bold prediction is that Boston Baro will be the Mets minor league player of the year. Now, he's going to have some stiff competition. I have already predicted that Ryan Clifford is going to hit 30 home runs. I've predicted that Jett Williams is going to play well enough that he's going to make it up to the big leagues, but Jett Williams has already won a player of the year. I had Nick Morabito stealing 70 bases, but he won a player of the year last year. So I think the competition is going to be thick, but Boston Baro can really get in the mix. He's going to start the year in high A. Last year, he did not play well in high A, but it was a very small sample size. He played great in Port St. Lucie, hit 288, 368 on base, only hit 4 home runs, but we saw him homer in spring breakout. I think he's going to get into a little bit more power. We might see him steal a little bit more bases. He was very efficient on the base pass last year, so maybe he's a little more aggressive there. And I would not be surprised if the Mets had him just sort of run out there and play shortstop every day in Brooklyn to start the year. Jesus Baez will be at third. Second base, I'm not even sure who's going to go up. Are they going to have Marco Vargas go up, or is he going to be back in St. Lucie again? I imagine Colin Houck will be back in St. Lucie. So you have A.J. Ewing's another guy that was in St. Lucie last year. Jeremy Rodriguez, I believe, would be the shortstop in St. Lucie, I would think, or maybe they play him and Houck a little bit up the middle. Maybe Jeremy Rodriguez plays some second. But I think based on the fact that Baro got up to high A, I think he's the guy. I think he's going to be the shortstop in Brooklyn, and that's going to give him a really nice platform to showcase his skills, showcase his ability defensively, and that's going to allow him to shoot up prospect rankings. I think he's going to be a top 10 prospect in this system for sure, consensus, by the end of the season, but I think he's going to have a huge year, really put his name on the map. He is my pick to be the Mets player of the year in this farm system. That's a bold pick. Now we're going to go to the pitcher of the year, I believe, this season, and that's going to be Jonathan Santucci. Jonathan Santucci was the Mets' second-round pick this past draft, and he's a big left-handed starter. I think he is going to be a breakout candidate similar to Brandon Sproat and Jonah Tong last year, where he's really going to put his name on the map. Another guy that by the end of this season will be a consensus top 10 prospect in this farm system. He'll probably start the year in low A, but I could see Santucci dominating there, getting the quick call up to high A, dominating there, ending up in double A. Jonathan Santucci is the starting pitcher I think I am most intrigued by right now going into this season. That's why I think he's going to be the Mets pitcher of the year. The guy that's going to be the comeback player of the year is Matt Allan. Matt Allan is going to start the season in St. Lucie. For those of you who aren't familiar or maybe are like, Matt Allan, that name is ringing a bell. Matt Allan was the guy that Bernie Van Wagenen based his entire 2019 draft around. They signed him with a huge overslot bonus so that they could bring in a guy that they felt was an early first-round talent in. And I think, what was he, in the third round they drafted him? He ends up having his first Tommy John after the COVID shutdown 2021. Then he has the nerve disposition procedure. That didn't work. He ends up getting a whole second Tommy John. So it has been a long road for Matt Allan, but he's finally healthy. He finally feels good on the mound. He was touching 99, striking out a bunch of batters on the backfield during spring training. So he's all the way back, it seems. It's going to be a big question of just keeping him healthy this year. He turns 24 years old in the middle of April, and he's going to start the year in Port St. Lucie with 99 miles per hour in his back pocket, and a guy that has gone the Jacob deGrom route. I mean, longer road. But if you remember, Jacob deGrom had the ability to throw hard. He had Tommy John surgery early in his prospect tenure right after getting drafted. And through that process of rehabbing, he learned how to be a pitcher. I think Matt Allan is a very similar case where all of his pitches are better due to this long process of just getting himself right. So I think he's going to absolutely dominate St. Lucie and quickly get the promotion to high A. And my bold prediction is Matt Allen is going to finish the season in AAA. I think they're going to give him, short stints. He might start games and only pitch 2 innings, but he's going to be dominant, and they're just going to keep on testing him against higher levels of competition. And by the end of the season, Matt Allen is going to get a taste of AAA, and he is going to be another guy that I think could be a top 10 prospect again by the end of this season. So my bold prediction for him is that he starts in St. Lucie and, checks all the boxes across the farm system, ends the year in AAA, which would be an unbelievable development for the New York Mets if Matt Allen actually did go the distance, basically, and not quite get to the show, but get to the point where he's knocking on the door going into next season. That would be a remarkable thing for this farm system. Now, my final prediction. I have to do one negative. Every year, I got to do at least one negative because everything is positive, positive, positive. I got to throw shade on one prospect and hope that I'm wrong. Last year, it was Kevin Parada that I had a negative prediction on. I can't remember exactly what it was. I did listen to that episode a couple days ago, but I think my prediction was just that he falls off of all top 30 lists, and I think he sort of has. That's the same prediction I have for Colin Houck. Colin Houck, the Mets' first-round pick in 2023, had a brutal season in 2024, and I don't know if it's going to get any better. You look at MLB Pipeline, he's already sitting at number 30. I didn't check Baseball America, but he's already kind of at that point. I think he's going to be a guy that is looking very much like a bust after this season. And I hope I jinx him. I hope I'm wrong. You never want to root for the downfall of any of these guys. So my hope is that this is something that I can hold up at the end of the season. I can say, man, I was so wrong on Colin Houck. Look at how he tapped into his power. The scouts are raving about his defense at shortstop. This guy is one of the better infield prospects in the Mets system. Right now, though, I just don't necessarily see it. So the minor league season starts today in Syracuse. Next week, we'll see Binghamton, Brooklyn, and St. Lucie all begin their season. So we don't know where all these guys are going to get placed just yet, but we do have the roster for Syracuse. So I'm going to pull up the graphic that they made there for the Syracuse Mets. Looking through this, you see a lot of guys that potentially could be up and down this year on the pitching front. Jesus Cabrera, Chris Devanski, they were late cuts in camp. So you never know if they can eventually make an impact on the big league roster. Rico Garcia was another one. Anthony Gasse, another one. Justin Hagenman is on the 40-man roster. He is starting pitching depth for the Mets. Dom Hamill. This is his third tour in Syracuse. Definitely his second full one. He started last year on that roster. Jordan Gerber is another reliever, the Mets prospect. Grant Hartwig, been in the far system for a little bit. We've seen him at the big league level, but now he is off the 40, but still in the system. Kevin Herget is on the 40. Daniel Nunez starts the season in Syracuse. He's obviously the guy that has the highest upside to come up and make an impact at some point. The Mets were able to hold on to Sean Reed-Foley, so we'll see what the situation is with him with his health. But we've obviously at times watched last year hit a low 2 ERA. If he is able to come up and make an impact, I would not be surprised. It's more a question about health than anything. You got Brandon Sproat, who I would think will get the ceremonial honor of making the first start of the season for Syracuse. Brandon Waddle, another guy that is starting pitching depth. I can't recall if he's on the 40 or not. I don't believe he is, but I imagine he's going to be in the rotation in Syracuse. Austin Warren, a guy that is on the 40, another relief option for the Mets. Tyler Zuber, I think he's the guy that could come up and down a lot this season as well, a relief pitcher that the Mets got the deadline last year to trade with the Rays. The catchers, Jackson Reitz and Chris Williams. Hayden Sanger would eventually join that grouping once Francisco Alvarez comes back. Your outfielders, Gilberto Celestino, I believe he was a minor league sign the Mets picked up this offseason. Omar De Los Santos, Billy McKinney. Mets legend coming back, Travis Swaggerty. The outfield is absent of a prospect to really sink your teeth into until Drew Gilbert ends up making his way back. The infielders, you see Diego Castillo, Luis De Los Santos, Rowdy Jordan, Joey Meneses, Luke Ritter, and Donovan Walton. I look through all those position players, and I don't find a single prospect. At some point, we could see Acuna back in AAA. Theoretically, you could see Beatty back in AAA, and Ronnie Mauricio at some point will be part of this AAA roster. But to start this season, no Mauricio, no Gilbert. That does not leave you with a lot of position players to get excited to watch at that level. I'm going to be very curious next week to see the rosters for AA, for high A, low A, and see where all these prospects end up filtering in. But it's going to be a season that will be very thrilling for the Mets farm system. Hopefully they can stay healthy this year, because last year it was a farm system that was pretty snake bitten by injuries, and that ultimately cost a lot of their most prominent prospects a valuable year of development. So let's just hope for health for all of these young players, and we'll see where they end up throughout the season. I will continue to devote Friday episodes to the farm system. And when the Thursday game or something the big league club is more pressing, we'll push those farm system episodes towards the weekend, because as we get going throughout this season, Locked On Mets will be 7 days a week, Monday through Sunday. I will have a show for you every single morning at 6 a.m. on YouTube, on your podcast feeds a little bit sooner than that. And again, the postcast is back, so you can watch Chris right after every single game. When Chris is not available, I might hop on and do some post-game streams. Again, you'll notice the difference by if there is postcast in the title, that means it's Chris. If there's no postcast in the title, it's me who's hosting it. I'll also hop on at times if there's a big game like a walk-off and I want to do a live show. I'll still do that at times, but typically I'm going to save my show for your standard 3 segment, 30-plus minute show every single morning, and let Chris handle those post-game streams unless he's not available. So I'll be back with a show Saturday morning breaking down the second game of the season for the New York Mets, Tyler McGill versus Hunter Brown. We'll see Brett Beatty make his season debut. Should be a lot of fun to watch that tonight, 8:10 Eastern. As always, thank you for listening. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. Follow me on X at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider and be part of our texting service, find the link in the episode description or go to subtext.com/Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listener, your first watch every day. Now for your second watch, head over to YouTube and check out the first ever 24/7 streaming channel covering everything in the world of sports. That is Locked On Sports Today, with our local hosts from each team, league-wide hosts from each league. Find Locked On Sports Today streaming 24/7 on YouTube.